Good morning. This is Chris coming to you from Ground Zero in my full mask, now required by law in New York when you're out and about. This is just for effect because I like my face covering today. Don't have to wear it in the house. It is probably 9 a.m. your time. It's noon here. I don't know if you can hear the church bells behind me, but that always signifies when it's noon here. It is August. What is today? April. What is today?
17th.
April 17th. They're all the same. Every day seems to be the same. We carry on with coronavirus 2020. Thank you for joining the call. On the call today from the leaderboard, we have our usual attendees from the West Coast and Chuck's office. That would be Chuck Michele himself and Josh Dale. From our office, we have me here in New York City and Brian, Director of Client Relations or Client Relations Manager over in Jersey. Avis, Client Relations team down in South Carolina. South Carolina now seeing a little spike in COVID activity. And of course, out in Kentucky, we have our business guru, Mr. Hank Yasek. Not Achek, Yasek.
Yasek.
Yasek. Whatever it is. And this is the Friday call. So we had a call yesterday with FFLGuard National to talk about all things FFLGuard going on across the country. We hit on a few different topics, including what is a premises that was defined better by the ATF last Friday. After we talked about it on this call and on the last Thursday's call. We can certainly talk about that a little bit today. I know Chuck and Josh have been busy swinging their saber to get stores in California opened. I don't remember what California's count was, but I'm looking it up right now. And I want to say that you guys in Cali are at, so you've had 973 deaths, and most of them are in Los Angeles. That's the way it's going out there. 28,000 confirmed cases. To give you all some perspective, because I don't know how much, I'm sure you hear all about how bad New York and New Jersey is, but here we've got last night alone in New York City, we have a total of 8,893 deaths. I'm not sure how much were last night, but it was coming down. We were at 800 a day, and now we're down to about 600 a day. So that's a good thing. That being said, we put out some best practices that we suggest you follow, and that's been in our e-blasts and on our website. And that's basically a recap of where we stand to today. Also, just a quick reminder, and I will remind you again at the end of the call, two things. Number one, if you have anything to say, please go ahead and hit the chat button and type it into everyone, or you can send me direct messages in the chat. We can certainly unmute you if there's something you'd like to talk about, or I could just put you on the spot and ask you questions to answer for us. Kind of like a game show. Also, the next California COVID-19 call will not be next Friday. It will be the Monday after that. So not this Monday coming up, but the following Monday at noon. We will have the next COVID-19 call that will do a couple different things. We've heard not complaints, but people just saying to me, hey, look, we'd love to jump on the call, but we're busy. It's Friday, we're open, it's tough to get on the call. Can you do it another day? A, and B, it just seemed to be, now we should start spreading them out a little bit. We should socially distance our calls. So we're going to add a little bit more time. So on April 27th, that's a Monday, that'll be our next call. And hopefully people will there'll be some talk about reopening mid-May in California. With that said, I am happy to, as always, turn things over to my brother, who can lead us in the charge here in California, talk about some of the questions. I saw a few really good ones come in. I know you have some crazy DMV thing going on out there, and I know there was some interaction on the help desk between our office and Chuck's office. So Brian, why don't you just pick up and tell us what you've seen this week and what Chuck's office has been asked and so on and so forth.
Well, I'm sure Chuck and Josh are going to go into the cases going on out there in California. And the main thing that has been coming in to us has been on identification. Apparently, California finally jumped on the driver's license extensions. So I'm sure that there are just, people that just want to have an update on that, what to do, how to handle it. So that's really all that's been coming in. You guys can tell us more what's new out in California outside of what I can. So what's going on out there, Chuck?
Well, we've got two baskets, so to speak, of issues. One is all the Cal DOJ snafu, which is literally true. It's situation normal, all fouled up with Cal DOJ. Even when they're not in crisis, they're doing things to try and make things harder. And then the other basket is the lawsuits and the forced closures. So on the DOJ side, the reality is they're making it up as they go along. They don't have the people in the DOJ offices to process the background checks as quickly as they're supposed to under the law. So they're basically reinterpreting the law and saying they have more time than they actually do. On the driver's licenses, we're not sure what's going to happen. The penal code requires a quote unquote valid driver's license. That may mean that the extension on those driver's licenses, even though it's going to say on the driver's license expired, but because of the DMV policy or the state policy to allow the DMV to extend the deadline, may extend the expiration date, those may be deemed to be valid. We just don't know for sure. Then we've got some questions like, you're getting a proceed on a shotgun and a delay on a handgun. How do you split that on the 4473? I mean, this is Cal DOJ creating troubles now for your federal paperwork. I doubt the feds have ever dealt with that before. I mean, I'm not sure if anybody on this call may have. But those kind of things, basically, we sent, on behalf of FFLGuard and some other clients, we sent a letter to the DOJ, which I think Brian sent around.
Oh, yeah.
Laying out what the code sections say and what the DOJ is supposed to be doing. And the problem is, even just getting these things to the right people at the DOJ is a project. So thankfully, FFLGuard and CRPA have a lobbyist available to them up in Sacramento, Roy Griffith. Roy Griffith is now working with friendly legislators, Republican legislators in Sacramento. Actually, they're working at home, but they several of them have helped us take on the DOJ over all of its screw-ups in the past. So hopefully, between the letter and the lobbying, the DOJ will take notice, some higher-ups at DOJ will take notice of some of these problems and take some corrective action. In the meantime, I mean, I wish I had a simple, clean answer for a lot of these questions, but it's like, it's a mess, and I don't think that the people at DOJ are overly concerned about what kind of a mess they create for people. They're trying to solve in-house problems, a lot of which is based on being short-staffed. On the litigation side, or the forced store closures side, FFLGuard has sued the city of Los Angeles. This morning we sued the county of Santa Clara. On Monday, I may get these reversed, but we're also filing against the county of Alameda. This is not a Second Amendment lawsuit. And we'll probably be filing against the county of Ventura too. This is not a Second Amendment lawsuit. There are other groups filing Second Amendment lawsuits, having no success with those so far, unfortunately, because California does not have a statewide ban, although interestingly enough, and by that I mean, if you have a statewide ban on gun stores being open at all, that's a broader attack on the right to keep and bear arms than for example, a city of LA says their gun stores can't open, but in the county, all the gun stores are open. So does the Second Amendment protect your right to be able to buy a firearm in the city in which you live? Or because if you can go to the county next door, then you can get a gun, you have your right to keep and bear arms, is their argument. But there is a movement by, I believe it's Assemblyman Santiago, trying to get Newsom to declare all gun stores non-essential throughout the state. I saw a clip from him where he appears to punt that back to what he originally said when he issued his emergency order, or a few days thereafter, where he said, I'm going to leave that up to the local governments. So I don't think, although nothing is ever dead. A bill is not dead. A proposal is not dead. They can keep lobbying the governor. They could try and change his mind. But I think at this point, he's not going to issue a statewide closure order for retailers. And I think that makes political sense for him too, because he has presidential aspirations. And he also knows that there's this rural sentiment building, that of hatred for him. We've actually got a couple of sanctuary cities coming up out here in California. So I don't think we're going to see a statewide ban, which throws it back to local governments. And the ones that we're aware of right now are Ventura, Alameda, Santa Clara, and the city of Los Angeles. Those are the ones that are, and city of San Jose. Those are the ones that are insisting that the stores be closed. So FFLGuard sued the city of Los Angeles. We saw it at TRO. Interestingly enough, our two plaintiffs were, along with FFLGuard, were Turner's. They have a store in Reseda, and Trader's Pawn Shop, and I can't remember where they are in the city of LA. And the city saw Trader's and then said, oh, well, Trader's is exempt, they can operate. So our preemption claim is based on, there's a state law that says you can't ban the sale of firearms. That's a state, a locality can't, that's a state law issue. We don't want local governments issuing licenses or banning the sale or possession of firearms. It's a matter of statewide concern. So that's preemption. So we filed that preemption claim. But when they allow one gun store in the city to open and the other one not to, then that city is not really banning per se. Their argument is they're not banning the sale of firearms anymore. They're just banning the sale of firearms at one store and allowing the other one to operate under some exception. So they managed to muddy the waters enough that we did not get the TRO issued. Now we're going back in and trying to get Turner's under an exception. And I don't know if anybody, how many of you guys may have a secondhand dealer's license, but I think it may come in handy for Turner's, because they can say, well, we're a pawn, we do pawn too. Meantime, it's still cleaner in Santa Clara, Alameda, Ventura, and we're just filing those lawsuits as quickly as we can. And we've beefed up our points and authorities, the argument based on what the city of LA did and said. So, we're still hopeful. We got to try to help those counties. But in the meantime, most stores are operational. And again, that's in large part because CRPA and FFLGuard and my firm lobbied those counties early on in the process, put out this memo about what qualified as an essential business. And our friends, went along and haven't flipped on that. As you probably already heard, I think I mentioned last week, LA County flipped a few times. Then we got the federal declaration that that stores and ranges are essential, and LA County Sheriff used that to reopen. He was getting a lot of heat too, so he wanted to. And I think that's it. I think that basically sums it up.
A couple questions did come in before we jump over to Josh, or if Josh wants to weigh in on it. But I know you did say, of course, there aren't any good answers on the ID right now. So we just wait. Two questions that came in real quick were, well, actually, Kevin said they're turning people away that have an expired driver's license or ID. Is that still the best practice to go ahead and use right now?
Well, see, we need DOJ. I mean, okay, so asking the lawyer, is that the best practice for right now? Yeah, sadly it is, because I don't know what DOJ is going to say. Are they going to say that that driver's license is not valid because it has expired, or will the DOJ see the light and say it's still valid even though it has expired by its own terms, because the expired licenses have been extended by DMV and or state order, so they are now still valid even though it says expired. But are you going to take that risk, or are you going to try and get an answer from DOJ? We are trying to. You guys should all be trying to too, get the DOJ to say, yeah, in light of the fact that the state is now extending the validity, extending the expiration dates of driver's license, and thereby extending their validity. You can take a driver's license that has expired, but the DMV has basically given it a grace period.
Right, and that would roll right into Ken's question as well, where he says if he ran the DROS with a valid ID, but the ID expires during their wait, it's the same thing.
Is that ID valid now?
Right.
I mean, obviously you can argue that it is, because the deadline, the deadlines for renewing licenses has been extended, and they're being deemed to be valid. So, like, if you get pulled over, you're not going to get a ticket for an expired license from the police. But is the DOJ Firearms Bureau going to say that is or a valid license or not? We don't know. So I mean, I wish I could be more helpful and have a more definitive answer. By the way, these issues are coming up like day by day.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to deal with them as quickly as we can. But I mean, the next thing's going to be COEs. Last week it was DROS delays. It's just relentless.
So you think that is the same way on the COEs and any other certificate or form or whatever the hell else you guys need in California? It's, hey, as far as we think everything's good because we're kind of in a weird period of time.
Well,
so
it's not the same for COEs or FSCs or those things, because, Newsom and the politicians in Sacramento want to make sure they protect all the people that have driver's licenses, including those illegal immigrants who have driver's licenses, and not have them cited for driving on an expired license. So the driver's license thing is not about having a valid ID to buy a firearm. It's about having a valid license to drive a vehicle. The other issues are more specific to firearm purchasers, and they're not going to get the same love that the folks get for their drivers to have a valid driver's license.
Yeah. All right. And Josh, what say you, man? What's going on? You got out and about in the world today, made your way over to the office.
In record time yet again. I'm not sure how I'm going to go back to doing this once the world starts back up, because, man, 30 minutes on the freeway is a lot better than an hour and 10. But in unusual times, there are unusual circumstances, and with regard to employment issues, there are definitely unusual circumstances that I think us as practitioners are going to be sorting out for a while. So for you guys as business owners, I want to go over a few things with you. First and foremost, this is a reminder that even though we are sort of in a crisis period, the state of California will still hold your feet to the fire when it comes to complying with wage and hour laws. And so you should be mindful. I know most of you probably have folks who are not teleworking. You may have an accountant or maybe some back office staff who are teleworking. And so this would apply to those staff. You need to make sure that to the extent they're hourly employees, that you are keeping up with your wage and hour obligations, particularly with regard to tracking their time, because it can become very easy to lose track of time when you don't have somebody face to face and they're working from home. Maybe they're answering phones, maybe they're doing your books or something else. And you can get into real trouble as an employer if you're solely relying upon the employee to be accurately reporting their time. Because what happens is they come back 6 months from now and they said, well, no, I worked a bunch of 10-hour days from my house and I only got compensated for 8. and particularly in California, as you know, wage and hour claims tend to be big money makers for plaintiffs' attorneys. There's an attorney's fee provision in there that makes those cases particularly enticing to plaintiffs' attorneys, because if they prove a little bit of damages, they get to ask for a big attorney fee award. For those employees you have who are working at home, who you can't sort of keep an eye on throughout the workday, there are really two options. The first and best option is electronic time tracking, which hopefully most of you have the opportunity to use, which is essentially a program that your employees can log into from their house to show when they're logging in and logging out, when they're taking breaks, meal and rest periods, and so that you have an accurate daily feedback that they're taking that time. And so 6 months from now, they can't say, well, on April the 17th, I worked a 11-hour day. Well, but here's your time tracking from that day from the electronic program we had you log into, and it reported 7.6 hours with a meal period and 2 break periods. So, you know, what, did you lie that day? It becomes a lot more difficult for an employee to make that claim. If you can't afford that, or if there's some logistical reason that you can't do an electronic time tracking program, then the old-fashioned way is the best way to do it, which is daily reporting of wages on a piece of paper. Time card. You have them fill out a time card at home, but you need to review it every single day to make sure that they are taking their meal periods and that their time isn't getting away. And you want them to initial it or some sort of acknowledgement each and every day that this is an accurate report of their time. Because what I think we're going to see once the world hopefully normalizes soon is you're going to see a bunch of plaintiffs' attorneys looking at all the ways in which employers scrambling to try to figure out how to deal with the situation, keep their payroll going, keep their employees doing work, you know, cover the wages of those employees who are taking leave under the FFRCA or the FFCRA. You're gonna see them starting to now examine with a fine-tooth comb where these employees might have committed technical violations. I'm sorry, employers committed technical violations. And as you know, California holds employers to an incredibly high standard when it comes to complying with the law, particularly on wage and hour issues. Another thing you guys need to be mindful of during this time period is you need to probably be sending out emails or otherwise regularly reviewing your policies as an employer with an employee, with regard to meal and rest periods, with regard to overtime with or without approval. And I raise this issue because, again, we get into unusual circumstances. We have some firearm dealer clients who have experienced interesting issues that you wouldn't otherwise anticipate during a time like this. For example, now, because in California we have gun stores getting shut down, we have had news people reaching out to gun store employees to ask them to comment upon gun stores getting closed down. And in one instance, we had a client who, and I don't know how this particular low-level employee was selected, but they were asked to come on and comment on behalf of the company about the closing down of gun stores and buying and all these things. And so this low-level employee went on and made a whole bunch of statements on behalf of the client without the client's approval, and some of them were a little bit controversial in terms of how they were describing the types of people who were coming in. They were talking about cholos coming in and buying guns, and, you know, not necessarily the corporate image that you want to project. And so, you know, again, this isn't something you as a dealer are probably going to see necessarily in normal times, but because people are looking to sell a story, that's how this particular client found themselves in that situation. So you want to be sending out emails. You want to be, you know, saying, look, I know things are difficult during this time, guys, but we're still adhering to the same policies. We're still adhering to the same policies with regard to who you're talking to when you're on the clock and when you're representing the company. We're still adhering to the same policies regarding meal periods, break periods. In fact, if you're teleworking from home, we're still adhering to the same requirements regarding workplace safety, which seems like a very odd thing, because how can you as an employer control the safety or the environment when somebody's working from their house? Unfortunately, and this is something you need to be aware of, and there may not be much you can do about it at this point, again, other than making sure you are reviewing the policies and documenting that you're reviewing the policies with your telecommuting employees. Workers' comp potentially applies in a situation where you have somebody working from home. So if you have somebody working from home and they trip over their own thing they left out, they can make a workers' comp claim, because you are essentially asking them to make their home environment a workplace. And so the same OSHA rules apply. And in normal circumstances, when an employer goes and puts an employee in a telecommute situation, there's an obligation under California law for them to actually potentially inspect the employee's home, or at least get some kind of sign off from the employee that the employee's work environment is safe. They're not working from a home office where there's a bunch of paint cans hanging over their head that could fall on them during a minor earthquake. You don't have that luxury here because of what we're experiencing. But understand that that should be a real concern for you as an employer. And the way to mitigate it at this point in time is to go ahead and review those policies with regard to workplace safety, all those things. Drill it into them over and over again. And if you do get that type of claim, I mean, on a workers' comp claim, there's not going to be much you can do. But if you get some other type of claim, like some kind of OSHA violation or something like that, you can go and you can explain, well, look, these are the policies we went over. We were obviously barred by the health orders from actually going in and inspecting, but we went over all these things with the employees, and the employee indicated that they were in compliance, and we had no way of knowing. So those are the things that you need to remember in these unusual times. You're going to be held to usual standards. And so, I hope you certainly, none of you experience anything like that, but it's going to be coming. And I suspect in probably 6 to 8 months, we're going to see the novel class action lawsuits, a lot of wage and hour claims, and things filed based upon how employers responded and how employees may or may not have responded. And we're able to gin up claims as a result of it. Finally, with regard to some of the assistance programs for employers, last week Hank talked about the EIDL grant program, and I talked about the Paycheck Protection Program. We talked about what great programs these were, and you guys need to get on them and apply for these grants and these loans through the SBA. And unfortunately, they're all out of money now. In fact, they're no longer taking EIDL grant applications. Most banks aren't taking the SBA loan applications. And in fact, one article I read said that some banks are rationing the money. So you could apply for a $200,000 loan based upon your current payroll and other obligations that would typically be covered and be part of that, the obligations under the loan guidelines that were issued for the Paycheck Protection Program. And then lo and behold, they give you $15,000 because they're just trying to spread the money out among as many of their customers as they can. There's currently a bill. Right now, there are competing bills, one in the House, one in the Senate, to try to add additional money to the CARES program. And the CARES program is the one that funds both the EIDL grants and the Paycheck Protection Program loans. But right now, there's fighting over the amount of money. The House bill has about double the money that the Senate bill does. But the House bill also has a bunch of conditions tied to it as to who the money goes to, some banks in different neighborhoods, things like that. And so it doesn't look like right now there's going to be any significant relief or refunding of this program, probably for at least another 2 weeks. That being said, I would still encourage you to go ahead and get your applications in. Particularly for the Paycheck Protection Program, to the extent the bank will take it. I know nobody appears to be taking the EIDL ones at this point, but some banks still are taking them. They're just not processing them. But the moment that the money comes in, hopefully they will then process your application. So that's all I have on the employment side. You got any questions, Brian?
Well, no, and I know that Hank is going to touch in on some of the loans too. And real quick, Hank, before I come over and wake you up over there, we did have a couple things coming in from some of the clients on the side. We were talking about the identification. One of our clients down in Chico said, as far as the extensions on the driver's license, she said the answer she got from DOJ was that the extension was to prevent tickets, not for firearms sales. So basically they were doing it just so they wouldn't have to write expired driver's license tickets to everybody. Keith, who's got in a couple places out there, said his field rep was pretty clear, saying that DOJ is not processing DROS with expired CDL CID. And what else we got here? DOJ is still giving the 20-day window to release after they approve DROS. So can they release after 30 days from the DROS submission? How about that one?
Well, and the answer to that is a solid no, unfortunately. Which, you know, again, the shame here, as Chuck pointed out earlier, is that these the DOJ is sort of doing this from the seat of their pants, as are others, but they're not making really any accommodations, common sense accommodations. And the last thing that any of us want is for you guys to be put in a position where you're subject to citation, audit, or even possible revocation because you did something common sense, given the situation and given DOJ's own failings in being able to process these things timely. But they're not going to give you any quarter on that. And from our experience with DOJ, while on occasion they will cut dealers some slack, the presumption has to be when you're dealing with them that you may get the agent who isn't willing to cut you any slack. So, you know, in those circumstances where you know, common sense says, yeah, of course they're going to get a driver's license extension. Unfortunately, you got to protect yourselves, even at the risk of potentially alienating a customer. And you'll have to explain it to the customer as gentle of terms as possible that, you know, this is state law and they're not giving us any kind of accommodation on this. And you know, I can tell you from the lawsuit that we just filed in LA and the lawsuits that have previously been filed, the courts aren't giving folks accommodations. And so you have situations like in LA where somebody purchased a firearm before they shut down the gun store, and now they've got a very limited window of time to go pick it up and the store's closed. And the court, even when this issue gets raised with the courts essentially go, that's not really a big deal. Well, I mean, if you don't own any firearms, it's a huge deal. Because now you're out here among the folks with, you know, police on sort of at half speed when it comes to responding to calls, and you don't have a way to defend yourself. But that's the reality of the situation, and you guys as retailers have to protect yourselves. And so letter of the law is the way you protect yourselves at this point. So yeah, if you can't get it within that release window, don't do it afterwards, even if it's DOJ's fault, because you'll be likely the ones held responsible for it once everything goes back to normal.
All right. Thank you, sir. Hank?
Yes,
Hank?
sir. Hey, quick question. I submitted it to you over, Brian.
Yeah, I saw you. I figured you had to ask that to Josh there, so.
Yeah, Josh, quick question. Can an employer email remote employees and say explicitly to not work beyond their scheduled hours as a quick Band-Aid to help prevent any sort of over-hour claims or anything like that?
They can. Here's the problem, though, under California law. If that employee does not follow the instruction, if they do work the overtime, you're obligated to pay it. And your only recourse as an employer is to discipline them up through termination for having disobeyed your order to not work overtime. But it's not, the remedy is not to not pay them, because then under California law, you've withheld wages. So yeah, and we've had situations where employers have flat out said, no, you don't work overtime. And the employee goes nuts, I'm doing it. And the employer's like, well, what am I supposed to do? And it's pay them and then fire them. That's really kind of your only remedy there when they literally disobey you and generate additional income for themselves. Again, we hold our employers to a very, very high standard here, perhaps too high, and that's one of the results of that policy. So
yeah, so with that high standard, and again, this is something I'm really harping on, particularly with clients I work with in states where they are shut down right now. But regardless, it's full spectrum across the board. Just like every range operator, and I'm sure some of you on this call are range operators, that you have a health and safety plan for your facility by creating an addendum document that is akin to a health and safety plan for how do we respond if we do this again in the fall. This is a good time to start drafting that document up and saying, how do we respond as things ratchet up, as things get imposed upon us, to create a documented process that you can communicate to your staff and team to not put you into a quagmire of, well, we weren't told this and we didn't understand this. in addendum to that, do it now because it's all fresh in our memories. We know what we were asked to do. We know the process that we were being put through. Do it while it's fresh in your mind and document the processes that you're currently using. And then if they need to be modified coming in the fall, if we go through this again, at least you've got 90% of the work done at that point. But create a health and safety plan for how your organization is going to change their processes, their procedures, and their policies in your facility should we be going through this again, which is very highly likely.
That's all you got?
That's all I got right now from that perspective. It was well covered on the financial plan side of things, where the well went dry this week on any of the financial support that the federal government's throwing at us right now. Again, I would encourage you, get your forms all filled out and get it ready to go should they refund it, so you can be first to the trough again on this next go around. But yeah, it's unfortunate to see the well went dry so quickly on that.
Do you know, as far as the loans are concerned, either you or Josh, whether if you had an application pending, if there's still a possibility of it being funded, or if you haven't gotten the money by today, you ain't getting the money? Any thoughts?
Well, it's wholly unclear. And I can tell you, I know a number of businesses, including my wife's, who put in an application a week and a half ago and haven't heard a thing back. And so, I mean, it's unclear that the money may still be there with individual banks, which is why I was saying before, go ahead and get your application in, because you don't know which banks are holding on to which money. But if I were to guess at this point, I would guess that if you have not gotten anything from your bank, you did not get in on the first tranche of this money, and you're going to have to wait until they pass the second bill. Yeah, that would be my guess at this point. But I mean, I can tell you from a small business owner perspective, it's very frustrating the lack of transparency we've gotten on these two programs. Other than the encouragement to apply, we haven't really gotten any transparency on what the funding time should be, and when we can expect to get a check, or even how the implementation of the program will work with regard to the money that's supposed to be the portions of the loan that are supposed to be forgiven. So like for mortgage or mortgage interest payments, for payroll costs, I mean, are those direct payments from the loan funding account to the payroll account? Are these things that you're writing off later? I mean, there hasn't been a lot of guidance on that at all. And this, what you raised, Chris, is just another example of it. But yeah, unfortunately, I suspect that for my wife's business and a lot of businesses who haven't been funded yet, that means there's no money.
Ken Bartel has chimed in on the chat by saying his understanding on the loans is if you got an approval number from SBA, you'll be funded, which I guess the converse is if you haven't gotten an approval, you're probably SOL. Brian, not to step on your toes, but I wanted to also, I wanted to jump over to Avis, who gave some good advice yesterday on the FFLGuard general call about what dealers are seeing with a lot of first-time gun buyers. And I thought maybe with the time we have left, you could just chime in a little, Avis, on what you said yesterday and on new folks shooting guns.
Yeah, the new guys. Yes, I've seen many articles. I've had many things that I've seen just on local news here in South Carolina and some national news. We've got a lot of new gun owners. They're walking into a store, they're scared, they're buying a gun for the first time. It is very important that we talk to those people, take a little bit of extra time with them, make sure that they understand this needs to be locked up. Is there anyone in their home that, should not have a gun? Go over these things. Make sure that they're very aware of the local laws that govern them. Our guys that have guns constantly, that they're in there, they know those things. But the guy that's buying his first gun, he's never shot it. Make sure he knows how to load it, how to use it. Give him some extra time. It is very important at this point. We don't want new gun owners to give us a bad name because of that, because they've done something that maybe they were just trying to protect themselves, but hey, they need to be educated a little bit.
Sorry, I had a delivery.
Yeah, you know, a lot of groups are offering free training. CRPA is pushing its free training for new gun owners. You guys may have access to local training, free training programs. I got crap because I went online. Somebody said, "Hey, I just bought a new gun. I'm real excited." I said, "Great, welcome to the party, pal. Get some training and consider your individual circumstances and how the gun ought to be stored." And I started getting a bunch of crap from the guys who are like, "You don't need training you don't need a license to buy a gun," which, you know, that's true. You don't need necessarily training. And I didn't really feel like getting into, you know, this sidecar show about, yes, but if you get some training, the odds are that you'll be able to kill the bad guy with more efficiently than if you don't have any training. And the odds are you'll be able to hit the bullseye more often. So the point is, you got to walk that line. You don't want to say, like, you know, you can't buy a gun unless you get training. But yeah, you ought to take some lessons. At least have the freaking 4 basic, if it's still 4, I think they cut it down to 3 golden rules of firearm safety. You know what I mean? So, but that's something that you guys can do. It's a good PR effort, and you know, makes it harder for folks to criticize.
Nice. What do you think? What do we got, Chris? Anything else going on up here?
I'm struggling to find my unmute button. Okay. No, I think unless anybody has anything to add, I haven't seen anybody raise their hand or ask to speak. Usually we have, I didn't see Will on the call. Will's usually good for
one of his coworkers is sitting in for him today.
Gotcha. Otherwise,
hold on, Chris, let me ask you a question here. So I see your comment here. California is selling more guns than Washington, New Mexico, New York, Michigan, and Vermont combined. Are you getting that from Nick's figures broken out by state, or where'd you get that number?
Those are the 5 states that can't sell guns. They're not essential.
Oh,
Okay. It's a pretty straightforward one there.
Yeah.
Well, you know, anecdotally, I'm hearing like 9,000 to 10,000 guns a day are being sold. And has sales gone down? Has anybody noticed a market drop in sales?
Yeah, Hank and I were talking about it.
Yeah, it's kind of spotty across the country. And I'll speak to a general trend in the more prepper heavy states, preparedness kind of states. We're still seeing a continued level of sales in states that, you know, can still sell. Obviously, stores that are out of ammo, we're struggling to keep the business rolling from that perspective. Ammo seems to be the major focal point right now. And there are some other states that the term I hear from them is it is turned off like the water tap being turned off, where business has precipitously dropped off, even if their inventory is there. So it's kind of there's no one trend across the whole country, but the consistency I'm seeing is the more prepper-minded states, preparedness type states, sales are still brisk, assuming they have the inventory. Otherwise, things have really slowed down in most other states.
Well, and Keith just made a good point. Keith just said that stimulus checks are starting to get received now. So there may be another little incline going on, because I did hear from some of my friends that they got theirs yesterday.
But as a comment I made yesterday in this too, and this is everything I'm working with my clients on, is taking this time to prepare for what's coming. This is a good reset period for so many processes, procedures, way you do things. There's such a strong break going on here. This is the time, if you want to change a process or procedure or a way you do business, now's the time to do it. And one of those is getting your organization and your staff prepared for what I promise you will be a midsummer deluge of customers who bought a gun, emotionally soothing themselves, and suddenly need the money more than they need the gun because they're continued to be unemployed, their credit card bills are coming due, whatever it may be, is to work with your team and say, how do we deal with a day when we have more used guns than we need, and there's still a train of people coming in wanting to sell their stuff? I've seen it happen before, and if you don't get your attack plan put together now, it will be very awkward. and you can hemorrhage customers in that process. So use this time to get prepared.
There'd be an uptick in pawn. There could be an uptick in pawn. People just
Oh, there will be. I guarantee it. There's going to be a significant population of people out there, particularly ones that don't take classes, that don't feel some attachment to that firearm, who are going to look at it and go, man, I need the money more than I need this gun. And they're going to be coming into the stores in numbers to alleviate their problem is I need the money.
Well, we appreciate everyone joining. We appreciate the conversation going on, not only on screen, but in the group chat. Reminder that we are going to have this call on Monday, April 27th at 9 a.m. Pacific. Chuck and I are going to open the call to any California FFL that would like to participate as a one-time join-in. So if you all have other FFLs that you are friendly with, speak to, feel free to ask them if they would like to join and hear what it is that we do at FFLGuard and what the content of some of these calls are, and perhaps that will inspire them to join us and participate. Otherwise, you can always reach us by sending an email or by jumping on our website and clicking the help desk button and sending us a help desk question. We have been getting some, I don't know, Chuck, Matt's been pretty busy these days. So it's,
you know, we're filing a lawsuit every day. It's like the almonds commercial. A can a week is all we ask. Well, a lawsuit a week is what we're filing.
Okay, so that's caused a little bit of delay on some answers. Some questions require more time to even figure out, like the driver's license issues. So we ask everyone just to have a little bit of patience, and otherwise we're all here for you, and we will catch you all on the next call, Monday the 27th at 9 Pacific. That's it. Thanks everybody for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.